imperfection, and the full logo's on the back anyway. But it was that kind of a day, and I was just going to go with it because that's actually kind of one of the valuable lessons that I'm going to offer is about living in that place of raw, fragile threads coming undone.
We like that space. That's a good space.
It is. It's a wonderful space to be an artist in.
I love it.
Right? So, I'm going to start with what's true for me in this moment. And that is that I am aware I have a desire to be impressive. And I'm going to let that go because in order for me to potentially offer something that you might find a learning experience, I need to let my nervous system communicate to your nervous systems. And I'm not going to do that by grasping this desire to be impressive or this projection of what impressive is going to look like. So my framework, my name is Frances Mulinix, and I teach performance and voice and movement and presence. I work with a lot of actors, but also a variety of artists, and I also work with non-artists as well. People who are just trying to find a way to cultivate a little bit more ease and presence in their own lives. So to start with, are you comfortable in this moment? Just take a moment to check in. And how do you know if you're comfortable?
Because all young ladies around.
But that means, so you're comfortable or
That
comfortable?
makes me better. Well,
And can you all maybe just bring your awareness to your tongues and just check in? Can you soften your tongues a little? Hi, welcome. Come, you should sit in. There's chairs.
It's a rule, you have to sit in circle.
I have to sit
Come sit in the circle.
Not a singer.
And let's take a moment to make some brief, frequent eye contact with each of us. And what is it like to be seen and to see? And as you do so, are you breathing?
True.
Right. And as you do so, can you soften your tongue? And notice if something else softens inside. Shoulders come down. Right. Something might shift. Or maybe it won't, and that is also okay. And then one more thing before I start to lay a little more knowledge on you all is, in this moment, how much of this moment can you receive through your ears? How much of this moment can you receive through your senses, or sense of touch? You might notice the feeling of the chair, the floor, your clothing. And again, just check in and contact your breath. And in this moment, notice whatever taste sensations you have in your tongue. And notice whatever smells you're experiencing in this moment. And then lastly, wherever your eyes are already, how much can you absorb, can you allow into your vision? And then we'll let that go in 3, 2, 1. While I'm noticing, is it possible, do we have any way of, I'm noticing that there's a bit of light. Are you finding that light very uncomfortable? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Do we have blinds or anything? Not really?
No. It's all good.
We're embracing that.
Really good.
So when we're talking about, I actually kind of hate the title. I can never find a good way to title what I want to talk about because managing stress and anxiety is actually a misnomer. You cannot manage stress and anxiety.
I probably made that title, I'm sorry.
I
could've
no,
picked
I
a
use
different
it.
one.
I use it, and so, but I think that if I said that I was going to give a presentation on regulating your nervous system and co-regulating with others and integrating your experience, no one would show up. Because that sounds awful. It sounds very dry, doesn't it? But the truth is that the charge that exists in our nervous system is actually really useful, especially in our art, in our relationships, and really in whatever we want to show up and be present for. But when we talk about stress and anxiety, what actually is happening is a sympathetic nervous system response. So I'm going to give you a little bit of information now. So we have the autonomic nervous system, and autonomic means that it is independent. It doesn't mean automatic, it means independent, right? I don't have to tell my heart to beat. If I'm not thinking about breathing, I don't have to tell my lungs to breathe. I don't have to tell all the muscles around my blood vessels what to do. They just know what to do, right? And so heartbeat, digestion, unconscious breathing, some of our reflexes like sneezing, they just happen without our control, and that's the autonomic nervous system. And there are basically 4 branches. It depends what model you look at, but I'm going to say there's 4 branches in the autonomic nervous system. So the first one is our sympathetic, or no, I think I have this wrong. It should be, I know, I think I've made a typo. That's okay, I'm embracing my imperfection. Parasympathetic is our rest and digest.
Yes.
It is. There's my typo. Okay. This is why you shouldn't do this at 4 in the morning. Parasympathetic nervous system is rest and digest. And so then, of course, to balance that out is our sympathetic nervous system, and that is our fight, flight, freeze, and fawn response. That is the stress, right? When I experience a charge or a threat, my body is going to protect itself. So for a moment, I'm going to get on my soapbox, because when I was first learning about the sympathetic nervous system, I heard about fight or flight all the time. And then after a few years, I started to hear, and freeze, like an afterthought. But actually, freeze is a very important stress response. It keeps us alive. We see it in nature all the time. In fact, I was actually running the other day in a park, and I was running, and I was really thinking about my running, and I looked up, and there was a doe literally 2 steps away from me, and we both were like, because we hadn't expected each other, and so we both froze in that moment. Freeze is a great response to keeping us alive, and it is really important that in our culture we value it and we recognize that it is just as important as running away or fighting. And then, of course, fawn. So sometimes in times of stress, we might turn inward and start to think about raising children so that our species can survive, or we might even show kindness or fawn over someone who we perceive as a threat. So it's really important to understand that as science has changed, we can now expand our definition of a sympathetic response, and that they're all very legitimate. And sometimes we've seen almost gendered expectations of what a response to a threat is. So like men can fight and maybe run away if you can't fight, and women should run away and then maybe fight if you can't run away. But if you fight, really, ladies, did you overreact, right? So it's really important to respect the fact that no matter what your age, what your gender, what your cultural background, that there is a realm or a vast array of responses to stress, and they're all legitimate. So that's my soapbox moment, because that's really important to me. Also, not all arousal is unpleasant, right? We're all adults here, right? Sexual arousal is a sympathetic nervous system response. And if you're like me, I'm a triathlete. I love intense sports. We're performers and artists here. That kind of arousal doesn't have to be bad. So it's okay to have a parasympathetic or sympathetic nervous response and not label it as bad or evil. And then, of course, briefly, there's the enteric nervous system. That's your gut. If you've ever heard about the second brain, you basically have cells in your gut that operate independently of your brain. You can sever the nerve that connects the brain to the gut, and the gut will actually continue to do certain processes. It's amazing. The gut's amazing. And then the social nervous system. And so this is one of the more recent areas of the autonomic nervous system that's starting to get understood and is really valuable when you look at stress, when you look at mental health. And that is, it oversees communication, including listening as well as my speaking. It oversees my ability to feel safe. It oversees empathy. It oversees my ability to assess risk. And this also includes my ability to read facial expressions so that I can say friend or foe, friend or foe. Are you a danger to me, or are you an ally to me, or are you a neutral? And so people who get into a place of stress can actually start to feel like they're being attacked, or that they're surrounded by people who are risks to them, right? I'm sure we can all kind of relate to those moments. And also our ability to interpret tone. So same thing, I'm sure we've all had moments when someone said something to us and we've assumed that we're being attacked. And they might have been like, I did not mean it that way, right? So it's really important to understand that the social nervous system helps us to either feel safe or to assess whether we're in a state of risk. This is also a way that we can co-regulate with each other, especially when we're in the arts. Often that means we get to work together, we get to sing together, or we get to rehearse a play together, or we get to work on a set together. And so things like brief, frequent eye contact is a beautiful way to start building that feeling of bonding. It also releases oxytocin in the brain, which is that bonding chemical. And so, you can even think about like church community groups or other clubs and community groups where you get to make those handshakes, those conversations, and you start to feel like there's a cohesion in the room. And what that is our social nervous system kicking in. I'm sure we've all been there where we can have like a really bad day, and then we get to actually have a real conversation with someone and we're like, I feel great. That's the social nervous system kicking in. So this is a really valuable tool that we can use consciously in our work to help to tone down our stress response in a moment. Artists might find that they have a more sensitive nervous system, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. That might actually help us to relay our art or to tap into something. But we often also tap into that narrative of the suffering artist, that I should feel bad a lot, or if I feel good, I feel guilty about that. And that is a problematic narrative. I'm going to talk about narrative in a minute. And so what we also might do is we might have such a negative reaction to the feeling of arousal that we try to overcompensate and just try to get rid of that feeling of stress or suppress what is real in the moment. That doesn't work. That causes conflict in the nervous system. So I'm trying not to feel what I'm feeling in this moment. Doesn't actually help. And so we can, so this is my other moment of soapbox. Because we get tapped into this idea of a suffering artist, that means we can actually sometimes lack integration, because like that's my touchstone. I work with a lot of actors who are like, I need to use this traumatic thing that happened to me so that I cry. And so it never becomes integrated. They're going to be great actors and they can be integrated at the same time. Same thing with singers as well. And then I talked about conflict in the nervous system. And so what also happens then is when we have conflict in our nervous system is we can build up tension. That's the central nervous system, and it's trying to overwhelm or control the situation. My friends, this is the bomb. You cannot be present and in control at the same time. Giving up the desire to be in control will enrich you in your art, in your relationships, in your ability to show up. Truly. Even though that in that moment it can feel terrifying to hear this, and I understand that. I have a need to have control sometimes, and then sometimes it goes out the window, and that's okay because I'm here with you. Stress, we know, is both a physical and a psychological response, right? And so there's choices that you can make physically that will then actually impact your internal space. And that's what I'm here to offer, right? So when I have a stress response, something's telling me that I'm in danger, right? And that could be stage fright, that could be I'm driving in Atlanta, right? That could be I'm walking down a dark street at night, whatever. Something's happening that's saying that I'm in danger. So when the sympathetic nervous system activates, the tongue root pulls back, and so that causes tension and actually changes the shape of like this whole instrument here. The larynx often rises up. Yeah, we've all felt this, right? The breath can become really shallow. So and I'll not leave this as a discussion, but just take a moment to think about, okay, so when my tongue root retracts, and when my larynx rises, and when I'm not breathing very deeply, how does this impact my performance?
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Right?
Utterly.
Utterly. Totally. And even as I'm sitting here, I'm feeling the need to take a pause. So I'm gonna take my pause, and I'm gonna, oh, there we go, my breath just dropped. So we can cue the nervous system. I want us to think about sympathetic activation as charge. The way that we interpret it is whether we're in danger or not, okay? So let's remove the narrative, because it's the narrative that's the problem, not the charge in the nervous system. So one of the things that I teach my students, usually the first class, is the sandwich. So the sandwich goes like this. Take a moment to look around the room and find something in the room that is interesting or neutral. And it could be a color or a texture or the way the light is falling on something. And again, soften your tongue here as you find and contact this part of the room, of your environment. And then go inside of your body, and you can find something that is neutral or interesting, and contact that. Again, it's a physical sensation. And then if you want to add some meat to your sandwich, maybe there's a little something that there's a bit of a charge in your nervous system, and you can touch in on that little niggling, maybe you're gonna sing today, and touch on that, but without going into the narrative. And then go back to your body, and you can find the same thing or something new that is neutral or interesting, and touch that. And then come back to the room, and you can find something new or the same thing that is neutral or interesting. And we'll leave that in 3, 2, 1. So this sandwich can be very, very quick. You might be on a phone with your mother, and it might just be a very quick outside, inside, phone call, inside, outside in a split second. I do encourage the people that I work with to practice this when the stakes are low. And then that way, it's part of your practice. It's a place you can go very easily when the stakes are higher. What this does is it brings you back into the present moment. It brings you back into your body, which so often happens when our sympathetic nervous system is charged that we can lose contact with our own environment, and we lose contact with our own bodies. You can also practice the veggie version of the sandwich, which is without the charge, without, I'm feeling pretty good. Outside, inside, inside, outside. Cool, great. Let's take a moment just to check in with this tongue root. Going back to this tongue root, right? So you can stretch out your tongue root.
You can even tilt your head down and look gravity. Yeah. And all of you at once, I want to hear what you had for breakfast this morning with your tongue hanging up.
And you can even have a conversation with a friend like this, right? It's part if you're getting ready for a show. And you can also and you can also hang out. Totally. And you can hang out too and just grab. You'll feel it after say 30 seconds to a minute. You might actually feel it actually start to shift even more out of your mouth. So stretching the tongue root can be a really effective way just to engage with your own body and to counteract some of that sympathetic nervous response. Another one is a yawn, right? So if you're like me, you can yawn the drop of a hat. I feel how everything bunches up, and then and then let go, right?
I can actually do that when I'm nervous though. It's like your body's like trying to like
And-
going down or something.
And oxygenating the brain.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Sending oxygen to the brain.
Totally. So yawn can be a stress response. And another one is just humming the spine. So just sit for a moment in this chair and imagine, can you feel your spine in this moment? And send a and then one more time from the bottom up. Great. And so I'm sure many of us have done a lot of humming as warm-ups, but even uniting it with the body and also with feeling the physical sensation. So when I'm working with clients, we don't think so much about how the voice sounds, but actually how the voice feels. Where in my body do I feel my sound? And the ability to perhaps move it around. But also, if I'm working with clients and everything's very tightened up here, right? We might just start to feel about how can I move my sound into my back. And that, it's a way for a teaching thing without it being like, I'm gonna fix you, I'm gonna correct you, let's work on the jaw. It might just be, as we move the sound around our body, this all starts to release. As opposed to thinking of myself through a check, is my jaw tight, check is my tongue tight, what's wrong with me and how can I fix it? Just thinking about how do I experience my vibration in this moment. So to summarize, right, stress is encountered, and then we often want to tighten up and restrict the breath. And that's also so we don't feel what's happening fully. As vocal performers, we want to open up and feel what's happening fully, right? My vibration is going to move through space, and what is happening is my vibration is picking up on what's happening inside of my nervous system, and it's taking the shape of my body. It's not just the shape of here, it's the shape of my whole body. And then it is moving through space and impacting all of you. So you're feeling my vibration. My job as a performer, whether I'm a singer, whether I'm a speaker, whether I'm an actor, is to breathe life into text, breathe life into sound, and illuminate my audience. Whether that's directing it to a microphone, so that's going to be recorded and someone's going to hear it another time, or whether I'm in a live performance experience and people's nervous systems light up in response to my vibration. So they're not just hearing me, they're feeling my nervous system. So what nervous system do I bring to this situation? I'm going to try and shorten. This is based off a 3-hour class that I teach, so I'm going to right? So, but I really want that to fall in, right? What am I doing here? Why am I a performer? I'm a performer to bring this stuff to life with my body. And that will then ignite the people who hear me and bring them to life. That is why we love, especially live, that's why we go watch shows and movies and go to the opera and musicals, right? It does something to us. It changes us in some way. And so I find it when I'm really nervous, remembering what my purpose is and that I'm here to be felt can actually shift my nervous system. As opposed to thinking about me and my bad day and, what are they going to think of me, right? I'm here to create alchemy in the room, and then everything shifts. So I want to talk a little briefly about why narrative is not useful. So sometimes we go, I shouldn't feel this way because, or feeling this is not useful, or if I feel X, Y will happen, right? The environment is ambiguous. So say I'm coming up and I'm speaking, and someone looks down like this, I might interpret that as I am really boring, or they don't like me, or I'm not very good at my job. They might be looking down going, I just want to kind of experience this and I don't want to use my eyes, right? I don't know what's actually happening for them. And so I look for things to prove my internal lens is true. If I believe that I am a terrible, ineffective performer and someone looks down, I'm going to go, see, I was right all along. but actually the narrative is not useful. And I'm not psychic. I'm not going to pretend that I know what's happening for them. So I need to let go of that narrative. I can still feel charge, right? I'm sorry that the singers are here, but the Mr. Wagner guy who was here last week who did 2 numbers,
Will,
right?
yes.
Yeah, right? So say he's going up and he's like, I've never done this piece before in front of an audience. This is a really emotional piece. I'm feeling very exposed. How is that useful? How is me feeling exposed or me feeling vulnerable or me feeling anxious actually useful in my character? And often as singers, sometimes we get very bound into the music and the rhythm, and I'm speaking in a different language, and we forget that we're actually also bringing emotion to life, and we're bringing characters and stories to life. That's not just singers. I work with actors, and I go, where's this modeling from? I don't know. What's happened in this play? I don't know. What's this about? I don't know. Okay, let's go back. Right? So it's so important that instead of feeling like you have to suppress what's true for you as the performer in the moment, actually use and channel that. If you feel great and you have an excited charge, that is useful. If you have a, oh my God, this is the worst show I've ever done and I feel so ashamed, you can also use that. Acknowledge what is true for you in the moment and let that come forth in your music, and it will make, or your performance, and it will change your performance, it will change your impact on the audience, I guarantee you. It'll also change your own experience of yourself in that moment, because you'll go, oh, I can use this now, as opposed to like,
I always had I'm sorry, I didn't
Yeah,
mean it.
please.
I always had an old accompanist, she would always tell me, she's like, it's good, have your butterflies, just teach them to fly in formation.
yeah, I had a teacher like that
that's
too.
what she always told me before
Right.
we went out on stage. She's like, you got butterflies? I'm like, a little. Good, use them.
Yeah.
Teach them to fly in formation, and then we would go.
That's it.
Sorry, it
yeah.
just seemed like that was
Totally.
relevant to
I had the first time I ever emceed an event, my teacher said, tell your butterflies to fly in a line, right? This is my breath. My breath goes into my body, it taps in on something that's in here that's true for me and comes out. And then I'm sharing my vibration. So, okay, I'm so aware that I need to like shorten this where I'm talking about. So I don't believe in formulas. You're not a math problem that needs to be solved. You're not a toaster that needs to be fixed. But I'm going to offer you some best practices. Use play and curiosity to help you disrupt your stress response. That can be about making a warm-up into a game. I'm going to do, I tell my actors to sing their pieces. So you guys can change the genre of your piece, for example. Make it goofy, make it silly, roll around on the ground, jump up and down, do hopscotch. Use awareness and contact, your awareness of self and your awareness of the present. So we looked at the five senses and the sandwich as an example. Hum the spine, right? Feel your vibration in your body. Activate your social nervous system to build up a feeling of safety. Create a regular practice. I really can't emphasize this enough, because the more that this becomes part of your practice, the more you'll be activating your parasympathetic and your sympathetic nervous system together. So pause here. This is really important. As far as we understand, and this is thank you to Joanna Kasdan, we think presence is your parasympathetic and your sympathetic nervous system both firing at the same time, right? So you can do that, and there are ways to do that. And I do teach quite a bit of that. This is thanks to Fitmaurice voice work, is I teach about that. I also teach something that I'm now calling the void, for lack of a better word at the moment, and I'm still developing what that is. And then use titration and willingness. So willingness, right? As a performer, I am willing to put myself through some uncomfortable circumstances because this is my calling, even if it doesn't always feel good. And then titration is comes from science, thank you Saul Kotzebue, where if you're trying to mix two chemicals together, if you just went, you might end up with an explosion. You take one and you add drop by drop the second chemical to the first to get the result that you want. So titration can be easing yourself into the work and easing yourself out of the work. Maybe it's the day before a big performance. What are a few things I can do that just kind of like nibble at this big cake that I'm about to eat on the day? And then also as you come out of it, what self-care strategies do you have to take care of yourself transitioning out of the work, and I think that that's an element that gets really lost by performers. And then sometimes we have some not so great coping strategies, right? So common in the culture, we're gonna go to the bar, right? And that's okay, and that's also maybe the social nervous system. But you know, if it's like a bottle of alcohol each night, maybe there's other ways, right? So I also have some summaries in my takeaways, but I'm gonna leave it at that. And I have offered a sort of a reading list at the back of your, if this is interesting to you. So the first few are more specifically about performance and the nervous system. And then some of them, if you're interested, you know, say you know someone or you yourself experience like anxiety or depression or something like that, there's some books that get more into that nitty gritty, if this is interesting to you. You are so welcome to come and talk to me as well after the hour is up. And in terms of the sources for my own work, I just want to acknowledge Saul Kotzebue and Catherine Fitmaurice and Dr. Raymond Castellino, who I haven't personally studied with, but Saul draws a lot of work from. And so if these people are interesting to you, you can also go and find them and learn from them as well. But I'm going to leave it there because I'm so aware that I'm over time.
It was awesome. Yeah. Thank
So-
you so much.
Take a moment to breathe, and then we'll transition and titrate into performance.